Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts. And today we're really looking at the industry through a very specific lens.
Right, because at its core, modern cruising is really about how lines manage crowds, handle sudden disruptions, and ultimately curate these unforgettable passenger experiences.
Exactly. I mean, we always talk about the shiny stuff, right? The new deck plans, the inaugural sailing.
To water slides.
Yeah, the water slides. But behind all that is just this colossal logistical engine. And today we've got 3 stories that show what happens when that engine is really put to the test.
We certainly do. We're looking at international security threats forcing sudden reroutes in Mexico, a totally predictable but massive traffic choke point forming at PortMiami, and then
We'll get into how lines actually weaponize all that logistical muscle to break a world record for margaritas down in Cozumel.
it's a pretty wild spectrum of operations today.
It really is. And whether you are planning a port day, figuring out your drive to a terminal, or just ordering a drink by the pool, the scale of these behind-the-scenes operations impacts literally every minute of your vacation.
Absolutely. It dictates everything.
Let's start with what's happening down in the Mexican Riviera. So throughout late February and early March of 2026, we've seen several major players,
Yeah.
Holland America, Norwegian Princess, and Carnival. They've had to just swiftly cancel or entirely reroute their scheduled calls to Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah, and the context here is severe. On February 22nd, significant violence erupted across Jalisco state. This was the direct fallout from a military operation that resulted in the death of the cartel leader known as El Mencho.
Right, he was the head of the Jalisco New Generation cartel.
Exactly. And the regional response to that was immediate. We saw retaliatory violence, roadblocks, vehicle fires. It basically paralyzed the local infrastructure.
To the point where the U.S. Embassy actually issued a temporary shelter-in-place alert on the 22nd, and that explicitly included Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara. Canadian officials put out their own warnings, too. You can't drop thousands of tourists into an active security zone.
You really can't. When embassies are telling people to lock their doors, cruise operators are paying attention. They monitor these localized security feeds constantly. The moment that alert goes out, their risk assessment matrices just light up.
Because cruise lines are famously risk-averse when it comes to passenger safety.
Highly risk-averse. Even after the initial alerts were lifted, the ongoing security ops made proceeding with those port calls an unacceptable risk.
Which brings up the logistics of a mid-ocean pivot. I'm always fascinated by this, because a captain can't just hit the brakes, right? Take Holland America's Zuiderdam. They were on a 12-day sailing out of San Diego, supposed to hit Puerto Vallarta on February 23rd. They just skipped it entirely and added a sea day.
Right, which is the easiest logistical pivot.
But then you have Norwegian Bliss and Royal Princess. They were scheduled for February 25th, and they actually scrambled to secure alternate berths in Cabo San Lucas and Mazatlan.
And securing a last-minute berth is incredibly complex. Keep in mind, port schedules are locked in years in advance. So when an unprecedented event forces multiple megaships to divert all at once, the harbor masters in those safe ports are just overwhelmed.
Because you need the space.
Space, draft clearances, tug assistance. You need enough pier infrastructure to safely disembark 4,000 people. And you're competing with every other rerouted vessel fleeing Jalisco.
We actually saw one revised routing where the line substituted a 2-day call in Cabo, which really highlights the lack of available berths. You just take whatever the harbor master can give you.
And you have to factor in the back-end logistics, too. Changing a port alters your fuel consumption models. You have to cancel and refund thousands of shore excursions.
Oh, and provisions, right. If you plan to load fresh produce or offload waste in Puerto Vallarta, your culinary team has to recalculate everything instantly to stretch to the next port. It's massive. And the passenger perspective on this was striking. One traveler on the Zuiderdam noted that Puerto Vallarta usually feels so tame, but seeing the social media footage of burning vehicles, it made it crystal clear the cruise line made the right call.
An unexpected sea day definitely beats navigating a cartel blockade on your way back from a tequila tasting.
Exactly.
But what's fascinating here is how this highlights the fundamental advantage of the cruise industry over land-based hospitality.
A resort can't move.
Right. A luxury resort in Puerto Vallarta cannot relocate its guests. A ship just lifts its gangway and sails away. And to put this in perspective, the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association released data noting that Puerto Vallarta only accounts for about 5% of all Mexican cruise stops.
That is a crucial statistic, because if you just read the headlines, you might assume the entire Mexican Riviera is shut down.
But 95% of cruise tourism in Mexico remains fully operational. Places like Cozumel, Costa Maya, and Sonata, they're processing their daily ship counts without any issues. The industry isolates the threat, reroutes the assets, and keeps moving.
Speaking of keeping moving, while a captain can steer away from a roadblock in Mexico, there is no steering away from our next logistical bottleneck.
Yeah.
This one is anchored in concrete right in the cruise capital of the world.
PortMiami.
Yes, the gridlock paralyzing PortMiami. It is bracing for an astonishing volume of traffic over two specific mega weekends. We're looking at February 21st and 22nd, and then February 28th through March 1st.
The numbers are staggering. Operational reports anticipate an estimated 135,000 passenger movements across these dates.
135,000 movements in a single weekend. When you think about the provisioning, the bunkering, the stevedore operations for a turnaround day of that magnitude, you are swapping out the populations of multiple small cities in about 6 hours.
The vessel count is pushing the port to its absolute operational ceiling. Up to 8 high-capacity ships in port on a single day. But the ship count is really just one variable in this traffic-perfect storm.
Right, because it's colliding with all the construction.
Exactly. Heavy downtown urban renewal and major port construction projects. Active work on Cruise Terminal G, plus Royal Caribbean breaking ground on their new terminal that won't even open until late 2027.
So you have heavy construction vehicles, closed lanes, active detours, all choking the main roads, feeding the port, just as these mega ships demand maximum throughput.
And downtown Miami has its own development boom with new residential towers. The road network connecting the airport, the hotels, and the port bridges just cannot process the simultaneous surges of ride shares and supply trucks.
Let's actually detail the ships driving this, because Saturday, February 28th is a massive stress test. 7 ships are docked. That includes Royal Caribbean's Icon of the Seas, which maxes out at 7,600 passengers. MSC's World America is there, Carnival Horizon, Virgin's Resilient Lady, plus ships from Regent and Norwegian.
And the pressure intensifies the very next day. Sunday, March 1st features 8 ships. Carnival Celebration, Symphony of the Seas, Independence of the Seas, Celebrity Beyond, Brilliant Lady, tens of thousands of people trying to traverse a narrow, construction-choked bottleneck at the exact same time.
We heard this wild anecdote from a traveler trying to navigate this during a previous peak weekend. They actually booked a downtown hotel just for its proximity to the port. It's normally a 10-minute drive.
A very standard plan.
Right. But caught in this bottleneck, that exact route took over 45 minutes. Traffic essentially froze. They literally had to abandon their rideshare, pull their luggage out of the trunk, and walk the final stretch across the bridge just to avoid missing their embarkation window.
Which perfectly illustrates that ground logistics remain the most vulnerable point in the modern cruise experience. The lines have optimized everything on board, but they are entirely dependent on municipal infrastructure to get guests to the gangway.
And the lines know this. Carnival is actually sending out direct text alerts to booked guests, detailing the construction hurdles and urging earlier arrival times to buffer against delays.
So if you are sailing out of Miami, you have to rethink your morning strategy. A leisurely breakfast and a last-minute Uber is going to result in a highly stressful sprint. You need to heavily buffer your transit times. Consider port shuttles or hotels within walking distance.
Bypass the roadway collapse entirely if you can. But once they actually get those crowds through the terminal and onto the ship, the objective completely flips.
It goes from managing a burden to engineering an experience.
Exactly. Which brings us to our final story today. How lines channel these immense passenger loads into record-setting onboard programming. On February 17th, docked in Cozumel, Princess Cruises captured a new Guinness World Records title aboard the Regal Princess.
And the scope of this is remarkable. They set the record for the most margaritas sold in 8 hours, officially clocking 3,410 margaritas in that window.
The pace of that is just hard to comprehend. The Regal Princess holds a maximum of 3,560 guests. So over an 8-hour sprint, they practically served 1 margarita for every single passenger on board.
It required the entire food and beverage department to synchronize operations across the ship.
Yeah.
This wasn't just one guy at a poolside bar. It was a highly coordinated push, leveraging multiple venues, all funneling orders for their signature cocktail, the 24K margarita.
And they absolutely dismantled the old record, which was 2,728 margaritas set at a restaurant in Bali back in September 2024.
The supply chain effort alone for 3,400 cocktails is immense, just ensuring enough ice, garnish, and premium spirits are loaded during turnaround day.
Right, and the 24K margarita uses Pantalones organic Blanco tequila, Cointreau, Grand Marnier, and a proprietary mix. The tequila brand is actually a huge factor here. Pantalones was co-founded by Matthew McConaughey and Camila Alves McConaughey.
They even delivered a customized video message to the guests and crew to validate the achievement. It highlights this deeply integrated fleet-wide partnership. Princess launched with Pantalones in late 2024. The McConaughey's are even the godparents for the new star Princess.
It's aggressive, successful brand synergy. And this record coincided with another huge milestone. Between January 2025 and January 2026, Princess sold over 1,024,000 margaritas fleet-wide.
But the geographical trivia here adds a brilliant layer. The Regal Princess was on a 7-day Western Caribbean itinerary originating in Galveston, Texas.
And Galveston has a very specific claim to this cocktail.
Yes. According to local lore, the margarita was actually invented in Galveston in 1948 by a bartender named Santos Cruz at the legendary Balinese Room. So having a ship home-ported in the birthplace of the margarita sailed down to Mexico to set the global consumption record is just a masterstroke of marketing alignment.
So how does a beverage milestone like this fit into the broader operational strategies we've been tracking today?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it demonstrates how modern cruise lines weaponize their food and beverage programs to manufacture communal brand loyalty. They took a standard port call in Cozumel, a day where passenger attention is naturally fragmented, and unified the entire vessel under a single historic objective.
The VP of Food and Beverage for Princess actually said that the guests who participated will forever be part of a chapter in Princess history.
They gamified the environment. They used their incredible logistical capacity to turn a standard afternoon into an interactive spectacle.
So you manage security disruptions on one front, push tens of thousands of passengers through broken municipal infrastructure on another, and then leverage that massive captive audience to break a Guinness World Record. It really showcases the complete operational life cycle of a modern sailing.
It really does. And looking at the sheer logistical might we've analyzed today, the maritime agility to reroute from a hot zone, the infrastructure to process 135,000 human beings through a single port, the precision to mix 3,400 craft cocktails in an afternoon, it raises a profound question about the future of the industry.
What's the question?
Are modern megaships ceasing to be mere transportation vehicles ferrying guests to a destination? Given their ability to completely control their environment, guarantee perimeter safety, and manufacture their own record-breaking cultural events, it appears these vessels are rapidly evolving into sovereign, highly controlled destination cities in their own right. Definitely something to carefully consider the next time you cross a gangway.
Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts.